Quiet, please. In exactly 15 seconds, we'll be on the air.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition.
It's Tapping the Bitstream with Robert Kramer. Tonight's show, what do successful musicians do that you don't? And why should you care? And now, the man who's been turned down by more record labels than the Beatles, your host, Robert Kramer.
Oh, here we are, once again. Welcome out there to who, what, and wherever you are. This is Tapping the Bitstream. I'm your host for this evening. Thank you, Don Postpartum, by the way. Don always comes in at the last minute to save it. I'm your host, Robert Kramer. And tonight, we are going to talk helpful tips list that you could probably find in a music self-help book. All right, Paul, bring the band down. Oh boy, these guys, I'm telling you, you get them in the studio and they just go nuts. Many of you listening who really, really want to break through probably have already bought and skimmed through a lot of the material out there that is out there. There's all kinds of books on how to make it in the music business and what to do and what not to do, and but I wanted to reveal a unique angle here that many struggling musicians, and I think bands out there, may not have thought of in making breakthroughs on your music career efforts, to realize that you have to ask yourself one simple question, and that is, what do successful musicians do that you're not doing? What do they do that you don't? I got to tell you, one of my favorite stories about a fantastic musician that I came to know some years ago and became fast friends with was a fellow by the name of Napoleon Murphy Brock. Now, he was the lead vocalist and multi-instrumentalist of one of the most iconic musicians and composers of our time out there, Mr. Frank Zappa. You probably know about Frank. But now the closest I ever got to meeting Frank was attending his concerts some years ago. And after he passed away, I started to see various Zappa tribute bands pop up here and there because of the fact that most people really, really loved his music and wanted to keep the spirit of his music and his overall talent alive and out there. And as a matter of fact, I was even in a Zappa tribute band for a short period of time called Dr. Bizarro and the Disgustos, and we'll get into that subject another time. But that being said, Frank had an unbelievable wealth of musicians that went through his ever-changing lineup. Some names that music buffs out there will be very familiar with. First of all, we have, just off the top of my head, we have Dr. John the Night Tripper, Lowell George from Little Feat, master guitarist Steve Vai, electric violinist Jean-Luc Ponty, George Duke, a famous jazz musician who passed away not too long ago. I could go on and on and on with a laundry list of people that Zappa had running through his band from time to time. And I got to tell you, one of the bands that popped up in the Zappa tribute circuit was a band that I became associated with some years ago by the name of Project Object. Now, that being said, associated with, I meant that I met them and I got to know them. Now, but what set this band apart from the other tribute bands out there was that there were guest musicians in this particular band that included former members of Zappa's original lineup. Now, Napoleon Murphy Brock was one of those musicians in this lineup, And one year they came to Chicago to play a show at a club on the northwest side of Chicago called Martyrs. I was on Lincoln Avenue. Some of you out there listening probably know where that is. Now, I had become fast friends with Napoleon after having first met him some years ago down in Florida, where I went to see another Zappa tribute band that he was involved in called Bogus Pomp. Now, anyways, I was invited to attend the concert that night, and I ended up being invited into what they call the green room. You know, anytime you've ever listened to a lot of the late night talk shows, they always talk about, you know, when the guests are in the back, when they're in the green room, you know, they're waiting to go on, right? But Martyrs, they had the green room was upstairs on the second floor, where all the musicians and staff kind of congregated, you know, hung out before the show, take a nap or have a drink or whatever, you know. And so I went upstairs, and when I went there, I witnessed some of the musicians just kind of, you know, milling around, watching TV. A couple of them were smoking grass, and a couple of others were just kind of just catching up on their naps, you know. One guy was doing a crossword puzzle, you know. And I had looked around for Napoleon because he invited me up, you know, about a half hour before. And one of the band members said, well, he's up on the roof. And I'm like what? Why is he up on the roof? Okay. And he says, no, just go through that door and up the stairs. He's right on the roof there. So I go and I climb the stairs to the roof, and there's Napoleon with his saxophone playing scales and rehearsing various parts of the show. And it was at that moment that I realized something extraordinary, and that was what it takes to set yourself apart from others who aren't as serious as you are about music. Now, Napoleon is a stellar musician. The man just knocks it out of the park compared to a lot of other musicians out there. Not to say that other musicians aren't as good or as, you know, potentially talented as he is, but the one thing that he had was that he had the dedication, and he had the passion and the wherewithal to constantly keep improving his craft. And so that is being the subject of tonight's show, is that you have to do what successful musicians do. And that means that you have to set yourself apart from others who are not as serious as you are about your craft. Now, at the time, I was going through a rough patch. I had a band for a while called the Kramer Band. And I asked Napoleon, I says, well, you know what? These guys, I can't get them into rehearsals sometimes. And when I do get them into rehearsals, you know, they didn't learn the last couple of songs that I gave them, and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, we could only perform shows that were like 45 minutes or less because they only knew one set of material, okay? And so I'm just like, you know, what can I do to get these guys to, you know, motivate them and, you know, learn some new material so that I can start booking larger shows and what have you, you know? So he looks at me and he says, how serious are you really about your music? You know, I looked at him, I says, I'm very serious about my music. And he said, well, then you have to find people who are as serious about their craft as you are about yours. He says, don't waste your time hanging around people who aren't serious. He says, you know, and he gave me a good example. He says, you know, if you were going in for an operation, heart or lungs or your brain or whatever, you know, if you were going in for an operation, would you want somebody who was like really enthusiastic about the medical profession and watched all the medical shows, but actually worked at Walmart part-time and never really had any actual skills doing what they wanted to do? And he says, of course not. You'd only pick a professional to do what you want. And from that day to this, it taught me a good lesson. And that was I only worked with professional musicians, meaning people who did music for a living. It was their livelihood, their craft, their passion, their vocation. It was how they earned their income. Not hobby musicians, guys who did it part-time in the garage while working at Target or something. It doesn't, you know, and I'm not putting those people down. I mean, there's a time and a place for those kinds of musicians. And I'm not saying that they don't love their craft, but those individuals who only knew how to do the things necessary to be successful at what they did were the people that I ended up hanging with. Now, so inspired by that thought, I started thinking in different terms rather than just as a musician who's begging to get heard, you know, because all the musicians out there, you know, we're just begging for our talents to be thrust upon the world. And I figured I needed to know what some of the job qualifications were of somebody who was tasked with the job of promoting music. So I went online, and, you go on Google, and after a few search attempts, I came across a job posting originally put online by Warner Brothers Music, one of the biggest music publishing companies out there. And it was just a laundry list of, different things that you had to do being a part of this if you wanted the job as a music promoter assistant, just working in the office. I mean, there was like 10 pages of stuff. But now here's my point. Many musicians and bands out there think that just out of virtue of the fact that they're talented, that should be their big ticket to success. Well, it took me a long time to adjust my thinking about that, but what I found when I did adjust my thinking was that my efforts started to pay off more and more when I started to focus on what actually needed to be done and just take the task at hand and just do it. There's an old saying that you don't know what you don't know. And what that means is that if there are things that other people are doing out there to be successful at their craft, whether it's music or business or whatever you're into, you have to follow the same template that they do in order to get positive results. Maybe not always in the same order, but there are basic elements to every successful effort that have to be in your strategy before you start seeing any results. Now, people complain to me all the time. I'm talented. How come I don't have a spot at the fame table? I write great music, and I got this band, and I'm good, and we played like 3 jobs this month. How come nobody is like bowing at my altar? And they say, well, it's who you know and who you kowtow to, and some of these guys, they got money, and this guy got signed by a big record label, so they've got no problems. And well, you know what? That might be true in a small percentage of cases, but what I found out was that there's one truth about the music industry that almost nobody realizes. And that is, you ready? Hold on to your seats. Talent is never enough. That's one of the first truths people need to understand out there about the music business. Really about any business, but specifically about the music business, because that's what we're talking about tonight. Now, I've played in 100 bands with 1,000 musicians out there, and I can tell you from experience that finding talented people is a no-brainer. The world is filled with talent, and that's why some people make it and others don't. Not because they have talent. But as an aside to that thought, I encourage everyone within earshot of this broadcast to go to Amazon or online or whatever and find a book that I read some years ago by an author by the name of John Maxwell, titled Talent is Never Enough. One of the things Maxwell has in his book are quotes by other successful people. And without sounding like a Tony Robbins motivational seminar, here's one of the quotes. Life is like a 10-speed bike. Most of us have gears we never use. And I like that quote, actually. It's by Charles Schulz, the guy who created the Peanuts cartoon. Now, to those out there who are still listening, I've boiled down Maxwell's philosophy into 3 basic phases. And I would say that those 3 basic phases are belief, initiative, and follow-through. Now, belief in what you do and who you are, that's so important. I mean, if you don't believe in what you do, just don't even get into the arena. If you can't even believe in what you're doing, why even bother? There's no point to it. Just be a hobby musician, go out there, have a good time when you want to have a good time, and then, work a target when you want to work a target. Belief in what you do and who you are is the absolute first step in doing what you need to do to be successful in music. Initiative is the next one. And the initiative to have the passion to go out and get the knowledge and bringing your ego down to a level to say, listen, I can learn from anybody. Don't ever think that you know so much that nobody can teach you anything. Go out and get the knowledge you need. Do your homework. And the last one and the most important one is follow through. Do the tasks that need doing. Put in the work. Evil word for most musicians I know out there. Work. I know, but just hang with me a second and you'll get it. One of the primary traits you need to have is belief. But before even belief comes into play, you have to have a specific goal. You got to know where you're going. Okay, you got to know that what you're doing is going to put you where you need to be when you start working. In other words, what are you after? What do you want to accomplish in your music career? Not just, I want to be successful in music. That could mean just playing the guitar in a subway for pennies, people throwing little coins in your guitar case. If you're satisfied with that level, then hey, you're a success. Okay, but if you want more, you have to specify exactly what you're after. You have to spell it out. Define your objective. I want to play live music in a band to generate a specific income. Or I want to be a member of a really great band and perform live. Or I want to compose music. Whatever it is, you need to spell it out to yourself first. Create your own constitution, if you will. What do you really want out of your music career? One of my primary objectives as a composer is to reach music supervisors who specifically deal in TV and film. And I've been hitting a lot of folks out in California lately. I had the belief in my music. I knew that if I could get to the right people, my music would show what I'm capable of. And in order to reach that objective, I needed to find out a couple of things first. Number one, I needed to find out who the people were out there who made the decisions. Who are the decision makers out there? I don't want to just throw my stuff in front of some clerk and have them, put it in file 13. And number two, what tools do they use in order to screen material? I mean, what's their criteria? Okay, and how do they go about it? And a lot of musicians don't understand that. You got to know that since the internet came into being, thousands and thousands of people are scrambling around doing things that they think are going to make them a success without ever finding out whether or not any of those things actually work. To know what works and what doesn't work, you need to find out the tools that the people in the music industry use in order to do their jobs. So what I did was I went out there and I looked up a specific job description of what a music marketing person would have to do in order to promote a release. And I got to tell you, like I said before, it's a laundry list. I searched online until I came across a job opening for a record promotion position by one of the major record labels. Because I'm just one person and I don't have a staff to coordinate all the activities that they were listing on this resume. I looked specifically for key things that I knew that I could probably do on my own. And one of the things I discovered was how to get the music into the hands and ears of the people who made the decisions for film and TV. They call these people music supervisors. Now, that's specific to my personal goals. Your goals might be different. But now I did my research and I discovered a couple of music delivery systems that the industry uses. And I started using those delivery systems, and I can tell you that they work. Now, before I go on, I'm also going to reveal a very important aspect of working your craft. The bottom line, and here it comes, folks, it's going to take money. Okay, because what you're doing, in essence, is advertising yourself to the industry. And the dirty and simple truth of the music business, or any business for that matter, is that without advertising, nothing ever gets sold. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to sell yourself. You're trying to sell your music. You're trying to sell whatever it is, whatever product that you've got out there, whether it's a live band, whether it's your own music, whether it's your personality, whether it's how great you look on film. Doesn't matter. But depending upon your goal, remember, you have to have a goal. What is it that you want from the music business? You've got to define it. Your specific task list probably varies from mine, okay? But the basic truth of it is you're going to have to advertise your music, your brand, whatever it is you're trying to sell to the industry or to the general public. Now, get a budget together, first of all, and know that you're going to be competing with thousands and thousands, and I mean thousands, of other musicians and bands who are already working their craft before you ever even got started. So you're going to have some competition out there. Remember that. And that's okay. All right. You know how competition works in sports. The team that puts in the most effort combined with the talent gets the best results. Now, they don't always win every time. But if they give up after the first game, well, then they're no longer in the league, are they? So you have to just keep pushing and keep trying. Here's another very important item. Before you spend your money, do your research. You're going to find a lot of companies out there who promise to promote your music for a price. Now, if you don't understand that the music industry only uses certain approved, tried and true systems for promoting their releases, you're going to end up wasting a lot of unnecessary time and effort and money giving dollars to people who aren't really going to get you the kind of results that you're looking for. Okay. Now, all of that said, we're going to move into resources. The one thing, if you're not motivated, resources ain't going to do you a bit of good. But if you're motivated, if you're listening this far and you're motivated to continue, you got to go to the resources. Let's get down to work. Okay, because the best talent in the world means nothing without the proper tools and resources to get you where you want to be. So now after you define where you're headed, meaning your goal, you should next figure out what the kind of resources are out there that will get you the results you're looking for. So let's go down the list for a bit and focus on a couple of them. Okay, let's say you're a composer, you want to write music for a living, that's my goal. So it's easy for me to talk about something I'm familiar with. Now, if your goal is to be a composer or a composer musician, if you're a serious music composer, if you write your own music and you're looking to get a deal of some kind, whether it's getting your music placed in a film or getting your music signed by a publishing company or getting yourself into a music library, whatever it is, you got to do your basics first. Number one, you join a pro, which is a performing rights organization like ASCAP or BMI or SESAC. Okay, now I'm with ASCAP, and I've been with ASCAP since 1999. Make sure you file the appropriate registration for all your songs with the U.S. Copyright Office. If you've got those basics down, those are the first couple of things that you need to do. There are pros and cons out there about some people will go, well, you don't have to join a pro. Not until you're actually really generating money and you're famous and you're all of this and people are actually banging down your door for a deal. No, that's wrong, okay? Because number one, there are a lot of different ways to generate income from your music before you ever even get signed to a record label or a music publishing company that most people who don't put the time and the effort and the knowledge in don't know about. Now, after that, what you want to do is you want to find a short list of resources where you can submit your music to for people to consider. Now remember, there's a lot of different needs in music out there today. It's not just about, getting your music signed to a record label or a publishing company. You've got different divisions of that idea out there. You have film and TV, which could include soundtracks, background music, and feature songs. And even if you write instrumental music, okay? Now I know a lot of guys out there a lot of composers who write music with lyrics, and I tell them, hey, listen, why don't you double your chances of success and submit one with the lyrics and one just the background music? I had a fellow that I know very well who he wrote this great song, and he had great lyrics to it. It was just a fabulous song. He loved it, but he could never get anybody to consider it for either publishing or use. So he says one day, why don't you just strip off the vocals, because the song itself, the music behind it, was really great. Well, he stripped off the vocals and submitted to a couple of areas where they were looking for background music for soundtracks for this TV show. And he got signed on the third try. And so you have to expand your way of thinking about your music. You have to be fluid enough to change and bob and weave. You have to be a reed in the wind, grasshopper. You have to do the things that need to be done in the atmosphere that comes to you. Now again, you have film and TV. You also have video productions for motivational purposes. It's like when they do training films for corporate training videos and things of that nature. So there's that, and then you've also got theatrical music and theatrical productions. They're always, people in theater are constantly looking for different types of music, especially if somebody wrote a play or they're doing some off-Broadway production or something. You'd be surprised out there, even for theater productions that already have some established music in it. It's like if they're going to do, some kind of a theatrical version of, Rodgers and Hart something or a musical comedy. Believe me, there's a lot of musical parodists out there. Writing musical parodies is what I'm trying to say. That you'd be surprised that there's a lot of opportunities out there for people who write musical parody. Now, the point here is figure out which one you feel you best fit into. And then you focus your energies on that area. Don't spread yourself too thin. Focus on one area that you really think that you can really nail it, and just go for it. Now, let me give you a rundown on a list of some resources that you can go to submit your music. There's a lot of online types of submission companies out there that you can turn to. Taxi is one of them, that's one that a lot of people think of first. And now I've heard and seen various reviews about Taxi, some good and some not so good. Okay, I've submitted to them some years ago, and I didn't have any luck. And I kind of found their song reviews not really as helpful as some might suggest. The truth is that most of the middleman music submission services, they will charge you a fee for screening and submission. And that's the reality of the middleman submission service out there, okay? Now, another one that I use, that I've actually been using for the last couple of years, is a company by the name of Music Clout, and you can find them at musicclout.com. I've been submitting to them for a while now, and I can actually report I've made some headway with them. I'm currently in discussion, actually, with a record label right now that is showing interest in one of my songs. So I'll keep you up to date on that, and I'll let you know how that turns out for possible inclusion in a future Tapping the Bitstream show. To see how many millions I've made yet. But now, to me, they're a much easier service to use than Taxi. First of all, they don't really critique your music, okay? What they do is they take the song that you've given to them and they submit it directly to the company. Now, to me, the critiquing a song angle has always been a little disingenuous in my mind, simply because if you play any song to 10 people in a room, only maybe 2 of them might actually even like it. And, of course, based on their own particular musical preferences, and some won't like it. So, I mean, music has always been a matter of taste. If you give a hard rock song to somebody who's only into jazz or folk, I mean, obviously, you're going to be barking up the wrong tree here. So, now, Music Cloud has a very wide range of opportunities from various sources, and you only pay a small fee for each submission, rather than an actual membership fee like Taxi charges you. Another one I like is filmmusic.net because it focuses primarily on music for film and TV, which is one of my main focus points these days. Also, I encourage music composers to obtain a copy of the Songwriter's Market Book. I've spoken of this in previous shows. It's published every year. It's got different sections for record labels and music producers, songwriting contests that you can enter, and also theatrical music productions, and a lot of other resources you can kind of tap into and explore. So I really encourage you to pick up a copy of that and go through it, because with the Songwriter's Market Book, you can actually submit directly to the companies rather than using a middleman. And the only thing that it will really cost you is just your time and either sending out a package to these companies, either by mail, or a lot of them have been using email now, so you can save yourself some postage there. Now, another direction that you can take if you want, in addition to doing the online middleman submissions and also contacting various companies directly through Songwriters Market, is to talk to other musicians and bands out there that perform music similar to yours and see if maybe they might be interested in performing some of your material to their live audiences, and maybe actually even get some audience feedback and reactions. If you do join a pro like ASCAP, Performing Rights Organization, and you have other musicians performing your material, you can file and register those performances with ASCAP and actually get paid for it without actually even having to perform them yourself. You get what they call performance royalties. So if you're just a composer and you don't play an instrument, or if you don't play live, you can actually even get other people to perform your material, register that performance with ASCAP, and actually get paid for the performance. Now, the bottom line here is, if you're really serious as a songwriter to share your talents with the world, and you want to start doing what other successful composers and musicians out there are doing, the same basic philosophy applies. If you write your own material and you want to perform live, but the do list is a little different there. Now, if your focus is going to be to be a performing original musician act, then you're going to need to get out and perform and perfect 2 things. And that is, number 1, your songwriting abilities, constantly write and rewrite, and also your performance skills. Doing live performances can really give you an idea how to stay in touch with your audience, okay? And also, what kind of material works in front of what kind of an audience. Now, we've spoken before on this program about establishing a brand for your own particular band or music. And in order to do that, we've talked before about getting on the internet and, using social media for the best possible effect. But the one secret that a lot of musicians still don't get is you have to get out there and perform live. You have to perform in front of an audience, okay? Now, for many musicians who want to have an original band, it's really tempting. It's really tempting to want to record an album of your material right away, go into the studio and put it up and sell it on CD Baby or TuneCore, and start making your millions. Okay. Now, the only problem with that is, without the proper financial resources to advertise your product, because that's what it is, folks, it's a product, some basic business knowledge that you need to have, you're not really going to start making a lot of money at first in record sales. In fact, I'd actually really like to clear up one of the main misconceptions that a lot of musicians and bands have out there that they've held for a long time about making records. There is this obsession with people wanting to make records. The hardest pill to swallow in this business is that, as a performing artist, your gigs should not be used as an advertisement for your CD or album. It should be exactly the reverse. Your musical recording should be an advertisement for your live act. Because the basic truth about it in today's music business is that many artists make way more money doing live performances than they make off record sales or downloads. And that is the truth. Why do you think the Rolling Stones have been touring for the last 200 years? Okay. I can't even remember the last time they recorded a new album, but they've been recording. Okay. And they've been touring and just doing the same material over and over again. They make tons of money doing live performances. And on top of that, like I says, because they are registered with the Performing Rights Organization, every single time they play every one of their songs, they also get a performance royalty for that performance. So they're making money just out of virtue of the fact that they're going out there and performing their live stuff. Number one, they make it off the ticket sales and, of course, the merchandising and all that kind of jazz. But they make money on performance royalties through their Performing Rights Organization every time they play their songs on stage. Okay, that's why they've been touring. And I think they're on their Walker tour this year, as a matter of fact, if I can make so terrible a joke. Hey, I love the Stones. I think they're a great band. Now, as an independent artist, you'll make a lot more lucrative income if you don't rely on the sales of individual units or downloads. Okay, but from the royalties from getting individual songs like onto a soundtrack for a film or TV series, which is what I've done. Especially if it goes into syndication. And if you are registered with a performing rights organization like ASCAP, like I said, you can combine your songwriting royalty income with performance royalties every single time you or someone else plays your song. And like I said before, you go out and you get other musicians to perform your song, and you can file a performance royalty for that performance and get paid for it. Now, I think in the last show we talked about how to get paid when you're not getting paid. And a couple of people took me to task on that and said, well, how do you get paid for not getting paid? How do you make money if you play a job for free? And one of the ways you get paid for playing a job for free is that what I used to do is I would go and I would try to get find where the open mic nights are. And I would go to the open mic nights, and I would perform my original material at open mic nights, but now only at venues that were registered ASCAP venues. You have to find out what the registered ASCAP venues out there are. And there are, you can get a list of them, just by joining ASCAP. And you go on, I don't even think you have to join ASCAP just to get the list of them. I think you can go online and find out which ones are registered. Most of them are ASCAP, I think, today. And but you can find those venues out there, and you can go to open mic nights and perform your stuff and then register that performance with ASCAP. And so on that, the next quarter or however they pay, I think they pay three quarters back, if I'm remembering correctly here for a minute. A little bit too much Cavassier tonight, folks, but I think it's 3 months prior to the performance, so they pay 3 months back. Okay, but now, like I says, as an independent artist, you will make far more of a lucrative income from combining the royalties that you get from getting your music placed in film and TV projects or video projects, and combining those, your songwriting royalty income with performance royalties every time you or someone else plays your song. And you don't have to get paid by the venue. The venue pays ASCAP a licensing fee. Okay, that's one of the dirty little secrets that not many bands out there realize if they do play their own original material out there. Now, what I've done is when I joined ASCAP some years ago, by the way, I joined not only as a writer member, but I also set up my own publishing company as well. So I get the publishing royalties for my live performances as well as the writing ones. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll put up a list to all the music resources that we talked about in tonight's show on my Artist First page. And before I forget about it, there's also one other source book that I like to give people a referral to. It's called The Musician's Business and Legal Guide. It's written by, it's compiled and edited by a guy by the name of Mark Hallerman. He's an attorney. And this is really, it's got a full... It's a big, thick book. It's got all different things about contract law in regarding music business, royalties. It's actually put out by the Beverly Hills Bar Association Committee for the Arts. I recommend you find that book, and you can probably find it online. I've got the 4th edition, but I'm sure they probably updated it since then. It's called The Musician's Business and Legal Guide by Mark Halloran, Esquire. Now remember, this doesn't happen overnight. Okay, I've been working my craft for 20 years or better. So if you're doing music to make money, you're going to have to look at it like you're running a business, because you are. That's what it is. It's a business. Now, if you expect success, you're going to have to work your craft, and persistence is the key. Will Rogers once said, "Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just stand there." Now, believe me, sometimes it's really hard to stay motivated in this business. Failure in this business is easy. And the absolute easiest way to fail in this business is by not following through, regardless of how talented you are. But I want to leave you tonight with a little thought. It's a quote by Michael Jordan about succeeding. And he said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." Which basically means, how long does it take to be a success in music? It takes as long as it takes. You keep trying. Michael Jordan was a success because he made more attempts than anybody else. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you with this little thought. If you really want to do what you want to do in music, you will put the necessary time, effort, resources, and money into your craft. Because there's a lot of competition out there. And you have to set yourself apart from all of those who aren't as serious as you are. Because if you're really serious, you'll listen to what I've told you and go out there and use it. If you're not, you're going to be just another piano man. I'm Robert Kramer. Thanks for listening.
All right, what do you guys want to hear?
Have a good evening. Good night. Take care.
Nobody's listening to me playing piano at the bar tonight. They're talking and drinking, but nobody's thinking, well, I guess that's alright. 'Cause I'm no one. I'm just another face in the crowd. My boss, he told me that I'll still have a job here long as I don't play too loud. The glasses are clinking, the boys they are drinking, and the jukebox is too loud. The waitress is talking and the people are walking, and we're getting a crowd. And the bartender's yelling, she needs another bucket of ice. I think I'll go and have another drink because it's cheap at twice the price. And I played Billy Joel's Piano Man for the 100th time tonight. And one drunk always yells and tries to pick a fight. And the people only wanna hear the song someone else wrote down. 'Cause I'm just another piano man in town. Well, I play Manilow and Bobby Darin, Frank Sinatra, Doobie Brothers, Eagles, Tony Bennett too. Pink Floyd, David Bowie, Johnny Mathis, Lady Gaga, ballad, jazz, and rock and roll, and old Chicago blues. Sting, Stones, Buble, Chicago, David Cassidy, and Paul McCartney, Michael Jackson, Huey Lewis too. That's the only reason that I'm playing tonight, 'cause I'm the only goddamn piano man inside, yeah. I'm just spilling the drinks, man. It's getting all over the piano here. No, man. No, sit down. We'll sing later, okay? No, I don't know opera. I'm sorry, no. Freebird? Really? Come on. Someone else wrote down, 'cause I'm just another piano man. Oh, I'm just another piano man. Yes, I'm just another piano